Hello everyone. In last lecture, we have studied fundamental rights which were enforceable in court of law. In today's lecture, we are going to understand directives mentioned in Constitution of India. The directives given by the makers of the Constitution to guide the future government in making laws. So, directive principle of state policy are enumerated in Part 4 of the Constitution from Article 36 to 51. The framers of the Constitution borrowed this idea from Irish Constitution. Dr. B.R. Ambedkar described these principles as novel features of the Indian Constitution. Directives, along with the fundamental rights, contain the philosophy of the Constitution and so is the soul of Constitution. Granville Austin has described the directive principle and the fundamental rights as the conscience of the Constitution. The makers of our constitution knew that independent India was going to face many challenges. Foremost among these was a challenge to bring about equality and well-being of all citizens. They also thought that the certain policies directions was required for handling these problems. At the same time, the constitution did not want future government to be bound by certain policy decisions. Therefore, some guidelines were incorporated in the constitution, but they were not made legally enforceable. This means that if a government did not implement a particular guideline, we cannot go to the court asking for the court to instruct the government to implement that policy. Thus, these guidelines are non-justiciable. Part of the constitution that cannot be enforced by the judiciary. Those who frame our constitution thought that the moral force behind these guidelines would be ensure that the government would take them seriously. Besides, they expected that the people would also hold the government responsible for implementing these directives. So, a separate list of policy guidelines is included in the Constitution. This list of these guidelines are called directive principle of state policies. So, what are the goals of keeping these directive principles? One can ask with the like, what was the purpose of keeping these goals, keeping these directives? So, this answer is very simple: for welfare of the people, social, economic, and political justice, rising the standard of living, equitable distribution of resources, promotion of international peace. Also, what are the policy behind uh, the concept of directives are mentioned in the constitution? They are uniform civil code, prohibition of consumption of alcoholic liquor, promotion of cottage industries, prevention of slaughtering of useful cattle like cow and bull, and promotion of village panchayat. And these rights are non-justiciable, like adequate livelihood and equal pay for equal work, right against economic exploitation, right to work. These rights one cannot uh, uh, go to the court and ask for a justice for not getting these rights, because these are rights given in the uh, constitution but in the form of directives, and they are not just non-justiciable. It they will be come into force, they will be come in category of law once the government enact them in the constitution in the other law. For example, a right of child for free and compulsory education was one of the directives given by the Constituent Assembly. That time it was not possible for Indian state to carry out huge burden of free compulsory education for all the children in India for free. They put in the directives in 2002. Government put that directives in fundamental rights as a right, And now the directive is a fundamental right of a citizen of every children for a free and compulsory education. So what are getting into classification of directive principles. Constitution does not contain any classification of directives. However, on the basis of their concept, content, and directions, they can be classified into three broad categories, which is socialist, Gandhian, and liberal. So we'll study one by one and relate their articles with the directives. So, coming to the socialist principle, this principle reflects the ideology of socialism. They lay down the framework of a democratic socialist state, aim at providing social and economic justice, and the set of path towards welfare state. They direct the state to promote the welfare of the people by securing a social order permeated by justice, social, economic, and political, and to minimize the inequalities in the income, status, facilities, and opportunities. This is incorporated in Article 38. Article 39 says, which has 5 6 categories. So to secure right to adequate means of livelihood for all citizens, to equitable distribution of material resource, to prevention of concentration of wealth and means of production in one section of society, equal pay for equal work for men and women, preservation of health and strength of workers and children against forcible abuse, opportunities for healthy development of children. This is in Article 39. Article 39A says to promote equal justice and to provide free legal aid to a poor. Article 41 says to secure the right to work, to education, and to public assistance in case of unemployment, old age, sickness, and disablement. Article 42 says to make provisions for a just and human condition of work and maternity relief. So, maternity relief and just working condition is are being put in several guidelines by the government in corporation. Also, Article 43 says to secure a living wage, a decent standard of life, and social and cultural opportunities for all the workers. The schemes like Manarega are one of such directives. To take steps to secure the participation of workers in the management of industries is mentioned in Article 43A. Article 47 says to raise the level of nutrition and the standard of living of people and to improve the public health. So, these are the directives given by this socialist principle or socialist ideology. Now we'll go to the Gandhian principles. What are they? These principles are based on Gandhian ideology. They represent the program of reconstruction enunciated by the Mahatma Gandhi during the national movement. In order to fulfill the dream of the Gandhi, some of his ideas were included as directive principles. They are to organize village panchayat and endow them with necessary power and authority to enable them to function as unit of self-government, which is incorporated in Article 40. And now this directive is enforced by for the 73rd and 74th Amendment Act of Village Panchayat. Okay, so our Gram Panchayat and municipal corporation are this are the product of this directive. We can say it to promote cottage industries on an individual or a corporation basis in rural areas. Okay, to promote voluntary formation, autonomous functioning, democratic control, professional management of cooperative societies is mentioned in Article 43B. Article 46 says to promote the educational and economic interests of SC, ST, and other weaker section of the society to protect them from social injustice and exploitation. So, tribunals of SC and ST uh, are given like came out from this such guidelines. To Article 47 says to prohibit the consumption of intoxicating drinks and drugs which are injurious to health. Article 48 says to prohibit the slaughtering of calves, and other minic and draught cattle, and to improve their breeding. So, government is doing the government is following these guidelines and directives to make laws and to make policies within the governance. Now we'll see the liberal principles incorporated in directives. So they are to secure for all citizens a uniform civil code throughout the country. Article 44 is given. It is very important. Many debates has happened to implement this directive as a right now, but High Court, Supreme Court itself judged that there is no proper time for now to implement this directive. Article 45 says to provide early childhood care and education for all children until they complete the age of 6 years. So, early child care and there are many policies and schemes given by the prime ministers and state chief ministers uh, for the early care of children, to organize agriculture and animal husbandry on modern and scientific lines in Article 48. Article 48A says to improve and protect the environment and to safeguard forest and wildlife. Article 49 says to protect monuments, places, and objects of artistic and historic interest which are declared to be a national importance. Article 50 says to separate the judiciary from the executive in a public service of the state. So, separating judiciary means you must be knowing that government act uh, in their own way, in with their own will. So, if judiciary comes in the influence of state or government, so it will be harm for the people and the other machineries. So, judiciary should always be independent, so that our government could work in proper way. if they if they do mistakes, or if they misconduct any law or exploit any law, the judiciary is always there to guide them or to review their decision in matters of governance. So, okay, and the last is to promote international peace and security and to maintain just and honorable relation between nations, to foster respect for international law and treaty obligations, and to encourage settlement of international dispute by arbitration. Okay, these were we have seen these directives categorized in three different ways. So, I hope you must all have got an idea that how directives were incorporated. You can read it and learn it later, and you will easily understand. These are self-explanatory. There is no need to explain this directive in thorough. Okay, we'll move further. So in these directives, we get an idea that some not all laws, not all actions of government, or not all laws in the constitution can be enforced in the court of law. Some are just directives. So you must be having a doubt that why did constituent assembly even put this uh, directives in the constitution. They could have put in some of the schedule or a separate document to directing the government, not to put in the constitution. But it is we should understand that it is very important for the government to understand their significance. uh, so there is one story behind this putting directive principles in the constitution itself. Sir B.N. Rao, the constitutional advisor of the Constituent Assembly, recommended that the rights of the individual should be divided into two categories: justiciable and non-justiciable, which was accepted by the drafting committee. Consequently, the fundamental rights which are justiciable in nature are incorporated in Part 3 of the Constitution, and the directive principles which are non-justiciable in nature are incorporated in Part 4 of the Constitution. So previously they had a plan to sum it up in a single document, like uh, fundamental rights and directive principles, but with the advice of Sir B.N. Rao, who was the secretary of drafting committee, these rights were annihilated, separated, and has given the two different motto. So one is enforceable in court of law, other is just directives can be enforced by enacting a law in constitution. Through the directive principles are non-justiciable, the Constitution, um, Article 37, make it clear that these principles are fundamental in the governance of the country, and it shall be the duty of the state to apply this principle in making law. Thus, they impose a moral obligation on the state authority for their application. But the real force behind them is political, that is, public opinion. As observed by Alladi Krishnaswamy Iyengar, no minister responsible to the people can afford light-heartedly to ignore the provisions in Part 4 of the Constitution. Similarly, Dr. B.R. Ambedkar said in the Constituent Assembly that a government which rests on popular vote can hardly ignore the directive principles while shaping its policy. Uh, Before moving towards the uh, fundamental duties, I would like to add one more point, that the framers of the Constitution made directive principle non-justiciable and legally non-enforceable because the country did not possess sufficient financial resources to implement them actually, and the presence of vast diversity and backwardness in the country would stand in a way to implement their policies. Also, the newly born independent Indian state, with its many preoccupation, might be crushed under the burden unless it was free to decide the order, time, place, or mode of fulfilling them. So, similar, exactly, it was like if everything was put under this fundamental rights or enforceable in court of law, then our governance could have been, deep into the burden of this laws. So and we have seen many examples in past and now also the constitution of other countries are being repealed and enacted again and again due to this mistake. But our constitution makers were more elite and were has the wisdom to understand this philosophy and putting this directives in a separate category or part. Now, moving towards the fundamental duties, the rights and duties are two sides of the coin. There are no rights without duties, no duties without rights. In fact, the rights are born in a world of duties. So, if you got rights, you must have a duty over it. Because mere giving a right and not following the duty over it, it will make a chaos, and the society will be unstable. Originally, the Constitution enforced in 1950 did not mention fundamental duties of the citizens. It was hoped that citizens would perform their duty willingly. So, during independence time, or when India was newly independent and constitution was being framed, it was naturally accepted. thinking of constitution makers that people will obey the duties, people will follow the duties willingly. There is no need of enacting a separate document for duties, making a compulsory duties for the citizens, because after 200 years of you know in influence of British, we were psychologically so content with that feeling of restrictions. The constituent assembly, or makers of the constitution, couldn't imagine any giving or restriction on Indian citizens. But later, Indian government realized that there should be some guidelines and duties in written form to be given to the citizens, so that they could follow it. Like I said, in 1950, the fundamental duties were not mentioned in this for the citizens. It was hoped the citizens could perform their duty willingly, but 42nd Amendment Act of the Constitution added a new list of 10 duties in Chapter 4 under Article 51A of the Constitution, and the fundamental duties were formed. So, what are these duties? Duty enlisted to abide by a constitution and respect our national flag and national anthem, to follow the noble ideas that inspire our national freedom movement, to protect the unity and integrity of the country, to defend the country when the need arises, to promote harmony and spirit of brotherhood. Okay, this means to express your brotherhood and keep harmony in the society. All we can all see the religious riots and whatever casteism. This should be abolished, and to live with the harmony. Okay, to value and preserve the national rich heritage. We all see many people go to the tourist places and rich national places of national heritage, like fort or palaces, and they ruin the no very character of the place, and do there's people go there, do parties and everything. So this should be avoided, and this is our duty to protect this places, to protect the natural environment, including forest, river, lakes, and wildlife, to develop a scientific outlook and humanism, to say to protect develop to protect public property and not use violence. Okay, to strive for excellence in all sphere of individual and collective activities, and to provide equal opportunity of education for all children. Okay, so these are all fundamental duties incorporated in part 4 and of 50 article 51A. So, what is the nature of these fundamental duties? Fundamental duties for citizens are in nature of a code of conduct. So, these are just guidelines or duties of citizens which is given, like this is a rule of how to behave. A few of these duties are even unrealistic and non-justiciable. Nature of these duties make them less interesting. Moreover, this ambiguous language in another hindrance in theirs being obeyed by the citizen is doubtably. Citizen does not know how to maintain sovereignty, integrity, and glorious heritage of the country. There is a lot of truth in the argument of the critic, yet it would be proper to call these duties as only a pious declaration, and one should always try to follow it or obey it in a pious manner. So that was all for this day. Thank you very much.